Here's your complete guide for the Week 11 waiver wire. I'm going to talk about everybody that you're going to be interested in and outline some landmines, some actual targets, and go through the whole 9 yards. Now, before we get into the running backs, I do want to cover some pretty obvious ads that we're not going to talk about in this video. Joshua Dobbs and Trey McBride are both rostered in more than 50% of leagues currently, so technically we're not allowed to have them on our waiver wire list, just in case if you play in a very shallow format. These are guys you're looking to add. Joshua Dobbs, rushing upside plus a beautiful situation. If you have Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison here in the long term, plus you're going to be able to pick up 40-ish rushing yards per game, you are a great option in fantasy. Trey McBride, a tight end in year 2, that's in the full-blown breakout mode that we are waiting for. Looks great, but both these guys are rostered in 53 and 58% of leagues, so technically we can't call them waiver wire options. Now, our first guy, only rostered in 50% of leagues currently, I guess maybe meets the qualifications. Devin Singletary will be someone that you need to go out there and pick up, ladies and gentlemen. One of the more premium ads that you have out there on waivers, as he's coming off a game against the Bengals where you have 30 carries, 150 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. Now, that's the positive. The other positives are, if you look at the underlying snap rates that we've had from Devin Singletary over the past 2 weeks, he is clearly the clear-cut lead back. You go to this week, he plays 61 out of 75 snaps for this Texans offense. You go to last week, he plays 54 out of 72 snaps for this Texans offense. So, I mean, overall, really, Mike Boone not really getting involved. I mean, if you're looking at the carries here for Mike Boone, he's a complete non-factor. The other positive is, at this point, CJ Stroud is proving that this is going to be a phenomenal Texans offense all season, right? Like, let's look past the first 2 weeks. First 2 games in his NFL career. After that, 37 points, 30 points, 19 points, 20 points, 13 points, 39 points, and 30 points. One of the better offenses in the NFL. Devin Singletary has a clear-cut path to the workload in this offense. Now, those are the positives. The negatives with Devin Singletary here will be, one, not really being involved as a receiver in this backfield. I mean, back-to-back weeks where he's had the massive workload and back-to-back weeks where CJ Stroud has had a zillion passing attempts. He's only had 2 targets per game, right? That's frustrating. In 2 weeks now, he's had 11 receiving yards. You don't love that from a full PPR perspective. The other hesitation that I may have here when it comes to Devin Singletary is looking at Dameon Pierce coming back into this offense. Because if Dameon Pierce does make it back in, we have to be realistic in that this probably does go back to being a running back by committee, while Devin Singletary would be the guy that I'm betting on. Still, we don't know exactly what the split would be. The hope would be Dameon Pierce comes in and just takes the snaps that Mike Boone is seeing. Now let's go over and update a running back that we had on last week's waiver wire video. Y'all know last week we called Keaton Mitchell one of those landmine running backs. Well, yeah, he looked great against Seattle, averaging 15 yards per carry. This week, he just repeats it. He averages 11 yards per carry. Looks great in his limited touches. However, with that being said, Keaton Mitchell is still someone that is not startable anytime soon. While he gets there in fantasy this week, while he has about 12, 13 points, keep in mind he has 4 total touches. Now, Keaton Mitchell so far this season has had 12 carries, 4 targets in his 3 games played. So he's averaging 3 carries per game. If you're looking at the underlying snaps here, Keaton Mitchell plays 13 snaps in comparison to Justice Hill at 14, in comparison to Gus Edwards at 28. I know maybe everybody's going to be very frustrated and they're going to say, well, Mason, Keaton Mitchell is clearly the best running back in this backfield. They're going to continue to give him more and more and more work if he's this efficient. And yeah, that may happen, right? You may have the volume slowly go up for Keaton Mitchell while the efficiency goes down. Even if he does turn into like the lead back here, it's still going to be a 3-man running back by committee. So do I want a 3-man running back? And no, probably not. Like someone I would way rather focus in on would actually be Zack Shanet. If you are looking at Zack Shanet rostered in 45% of leagues in comparison to Keaton Mitchell at 47, I'm going to prefer Charbonnet off waivers this week if somehow you're lucky enough to grab him. This is a running back that for 3 straight weeks now sees more snaps than what you had with Kenneth Walker. It is a clear divide there are clear roles for these running backs, and that Zack Shanet is going to be out there in the 2-minute drill. Zack Shanet is going to be out there on third downs. Kenneth Walker will be the first and second down back here. We had Charbonnet as that buy low player for us last week. I wouldn't even have included him if I knew he was only rostered in 45% of leagues. But nonetheless, 3 straight weeks leading the team in snaps. Going forward, the Seattle Seahawks have brutal matchups at the running back position. And what this may end up doing is this may end up putting Seattle in a spot where you end up having to throw the passing down back out there a little bit more if they fall behind in these big games. What I'm looking at with Charbonnet is like the new Zach Moss, the new Tyler Algier, where you're not starting him when the other guy in his backfield's healthy, unless you are desperate. But if you're desperate, you can start Zach Charbonnet. But the value is with the hidden upside of if Kenneth Walker were to go down, then Charbonnet turns into that league winner. Now, Tai Chandler will be our next running back. If you needed to start a running back out of this list this next week, not named Devin Singletary, Tai Chandler would probably be your guy. Alexander Madison goes into concussion protocol. So now you're looking at no Alexander Madison, no Cam Akers. Obviously, Madison will come back in the long term, but in the short term, he's probably going to miss. So Chandler steps into an offense that's firing on all cylinders. Chandler steps in and sees 15 carries, 45 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. What I'm interested is, will Tai Chandler be involved as a receiver? Because if he is, then I think you can be excited. And he was getting involved as a receiver earlier in the year. He has 5 receptions to only 23 carries, right? This kind of a receiving profile. But obviously, once they decide to use him more so as the feature back, if Alexander Madison were to miss time, that type of receiving usage may end up changing. Now, let's go ahead and let's pull up some wide receivers here. Now, I saw some people saying that they were looking to cut Gabe Davis. No, if Gabe Davis is out there on your waiver wire, ladies and gentlemen, go get Gabe Davis before the game tonight. No idea how the hell he would hit your waivers. And of course, if you wanted to go and say Gabe Davis is a bum wide receiver, you can do so on Underdog Fantasy. If you want to take the fewer than 40-ish receiving yards for Gabe Davis, you do you. I'm not going to recommend it. But yeah, promo code FLOCK and check out all those pick'ems over on Underdog. Plus, you'll get a 100% deposit match, our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and an exclusive Josh Allen special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard, ladies and gentlemen. Now, our next wide receiver will be Shahed. Shahed rostered in 50% of leagues exactly. So, I'm sure he's not going to be available in the majority of your leagues, but I do want to talk about him because we talked about him after the blow-up game against the Indianapolis Colts, where he had 153 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown. And what I said is, he's a landmine. He's a trap. Don't pick him up. It's not going to be worth your while. The reason being is he only had like 3 targets. The following week, he only had 3 targets as well. When you had a healthy Michael Thomas, healthy Chris Olave, a healthy Alvin Kamara, she just simply was not going to have the target volume. Well, now a couple things have happened. One, Derek Carr is injured, and you have Jameis Winston in this offense. We know Winston will actually look further downfield, and while Winston will make some mistakes, he's not going to be a check down princess. And 2, if you're looking at Shahed, you have the Michael Thomas injury, where Shahed can actually command volume now. He had 9 targets this past week, which is actually his season-long high. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say while Shahed was that trap earlier in the year, I think that now you can pick him up. Elijah Moore, rostered in 42% of leagues, is someone that I want to be looking at as well. What's very interesting is once you have Donovan Peoples-Jones traded from this Browns offense, while Cedric Tillman is slowly increasing his role, and maybe Tillman's a guy you looked at if you're playing in like a 16-team league where you have deep benches as well. In reality, what's actually happening with this Cleveland Browns offense is they're getting significantly more concentrated. If you look at the target volume and what we had with Cleveland this week with Deshaun Watson under center, you had only 3 guys really getting involved as receivers. You had Amari Cooper, you had David Njoku, and you had Elijah Moore. Now, of course, Elijah Moore had an okay game. He had 44 receiving yards, 5 receptions, and the receiving touchdown. It's not a blow-up spot from this Browns offense by any means. It was a brutal matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens defense that we know has been great all season now. So going forward, if we are projecting this, I think it should be a better situation for Elijah Moore than it previously was. And yeah, I think you can pick him up if you are really, really wanting a receiver. And someone else that if you are really, really wanting a wide receiver you can pick up will be Brandon Cooks. Now, Brandon Cooks, massive spike week. I mean, if you had Brandon Cooks in an underdog best ball draft, I am sure you are sitting there happy, counting your money. This is someone that gives you 173 receiving yards, the receiving touchdown off of 10 targets. Now, my question for you is this sustainable going forward, ladies and gentlemen? Because what I'm looking at is a 30-year-old wide receiver that previous to this was averaging about 4 targets per game. If you look at his game log, 4 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 2 targets last week against Philly, and then a blow-up 10-target game against the Giants here, where the Dallas Cowboys score 49 points and it's not even a football game. My initial reaction of this is it's probably just a distraction. It's probably something that we cannot consistently rely upon going forward. I'm saying this as someone who loves Brandon Cooks. How back in the day, my Twitter avatar used to be Brandon Cooks. That was when he was in New Orleans, but still. Really like the dude, really rooting for him. I don't know if we can consistently rely on the production. So while you can pick him up, I think he's more like in the Elijah Moore, in the Shahed bucket. I would much prefer one of the running backs with upside, such as Devin Singletary or Zack Shanet off waivers this week, though. Now, going over to another wide receiver, just in case you need to go a little bit deeper here, Demario Douglas, only rostered in 36% of leagues still. Coming off a game where he had 9 targets, I keep being hesitant to start Demario Douglas. I keep saying, well, you know what? It's a horrendous offense. Where's the real upside? And he keeps on having consistent target volume. I mean, over the past month now, you're looking at 6, 7, 7, and 9 targets. So I mean, he's out there averaging 7, 8 targets per game. Now, the issue that you're going to have in this offense is there's really not going to be much touchdown upside, right? So I still kind of stand by the sentiment that we had earlier in the year. While you can pick up Demario Douglas and you can roster him just in case we really need that depth play if you're playing like a 12-team league with multiple flex spots, in like a 10-team league with only 2 receivers and 1 flex, probably doesn't possess the upside to really move the needle, given the fact that you kind of do have to chase someone with a little more touchdown upside. Now, going over to someone that looks like he has a considerable amount of upside, Noah Brown coming from nowhere, and Noah Brown back-to-back weeks blowing up for you here. I mean, this week, you have 172 receiving yards. The week prior, 153 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown at the same time. Now, the question is going forward, is this reliable? I don't know the answer to that question. The primary thing that we're going to have to be looking at is what happens when Nico Collins comes back in. Because if Nico Collins comes back in, Tank Dell is still the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. I think we see that consistently with his target volume. Dalton Schultz is at the same time getting a considerable amount of volume here for tight ends. So if we add in Nico Collins, can Noah Brown be viable as like the 4th option in this offense? I doubt it. I am uncertain if Nico Collins comes back this week, however. So this week, if you needed a wide receiver, I think you could go ahead and play Noah Brown. Now, our last wide receiver that we are going to have on this list will be Jaden Reed. If we are looking at Jaden Reed here, I understand, great week, right? He gets you the 5 targets, 84 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Now, similar to these other wide receivers, I don't necessarily think that it's someone with a crazy ceiling. The reason being is Christian Watson still leads this team in targets. This is still a very bad offense. And most concerningly, if you look at how many players are getting targeted here in Green Bay, it is a small pie to begin with, but they are dividing that into a million little pieces. Like at least with the Chiefs offense, right? While they divide that out, while they just spread the ball out to every single skill positional guy on that roster, it's such a large pie where you have Patrick Mahomes where you will have a couple people eating every week. Here in Green Bay, while Jaden Reed's the guy this week, going forward, could we consistently rely upon? Probably not, you know. He will have to consistently show us that he is getting more and more and more in this offense. I'm unsure if that will happen. Of course, we can pick him up for now and continue to monitor, and then we can change our mind and maybe say that he's a startable player 3 or 4 weeks from now. Obviously, we're going to expect the rookie continues to get better as the season goes on. And then if Joshua Dobbs is not available for you, and we needed to go through and pick up a QB streamer, the QB streamer that you're probably going to be having to look at now could potentially be Jameis Winston. I mean, going back to what we were previously discussing with Jameis here, not necessarily a great real-life quarterback, right? I mean, obviously, he'll make mistakes. He is that DGAF quarterback. But we've seen Jameis be extremely viable in fantasy before, just given the fact that he is willing to throw the ball far downfield. We can see some pretty big plays. So if you were desperate, say if you were in a 14-team, 16-team league, Derek Carr was your starting quarterback, you need to go pick up someone, you can go ahead and you can go get Jameis. I definitely would rather have Joshua Dobbs, though. But to reiterate with this video, all these wide receivers are somewhat intriguing. All of them fall in the range of like, okay, well, we can pick them up, but I don't even know if we can start them right away. So I would prefer us to go and prioritize the running backs that we think have upside here off waivers. And if you really needed to pick up a wide receiver, or if you just have a dead roster spot, then you can definitely look at one of these guys. They have reason to be excited, but reasons also believe they maybe have a cap ceiling, which is typically what we see from wide receivers this time of the year off waivers. But I think that's all I have for y'all with this video. If you have not done so already, please hit that like, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog, you can find that link in the live chat, in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a Josh Allen special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard. So make sure you take advantage of that, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out in the live stream later tonight, because it will be our 200th day in a row of live streaming without missing a single day.